All right, well, we have a couple minutes here for off script. And I don't know where we can take this one because it's, let's just play and see what happens with it. I'm going to ask you a pretty broad question. I mean, not to give away too much because this is still in development, but we're going to be doing a special feature at the end of the month.
Yep.
And it's exciting for us because it's a piece of pure journalism that I think you're all going to like when you see it. But I mean, the context of this is from the broadest perspectives, the perspective of nations, the perspective of culture. How does quality, and however you want to define that, how does quality affect and is affected by things like history, trade, sociology, politics, culture? I mean, how do all those things, and I know we're all thinking about this now, but in your perspective, how do those things affect and are affected by what a country is, the way a country has grown in its cultural development? How does that affect the quality that comes out of that country?
Oof. Didn't Duran write, what was that, the history, was that Duran or was that, it was Duran,
I think it was Duran,
The History
yes,
of Quality?
yes, uh-huh.
Yeah, just read that book, you'll have it.
There you go. That's our show.
That's our show. It's like that thing. I don't know, other than my gut feeling is quality, like everything else, getting away from the technical aspect, the let's say the inspection aspect of quality, just the sense of quality, what quality means to me and versus what it means to somebody else in another culture, I think is cultural. I mean, it depends on what you've been surrounded with. What is quality meant to somebody in a third world country, which might mean it simply works, as opposed to quality in a first world country where, no, I don't want it only to work, I want it to look good, I want it to last, so on and so forth. So I think there is both a cultural and what's the word I'm looking for? The way you were brought up, your family environment, or whatever you want to say.
Genealogy?
But really, I'm saying it's the way you were raised within your culture as well as your culture yourself that gives you an expectation of what does quality mean. And look, I mean, I think we've all gone to. I was in. Oh my gosh, I was in Italy quite a while ago, and I had to go to the bank. Right? So, no problem, there's the bank over there. So you go to the bank, and there's a couple tellers, but there's no queues.
Yeah.
It's just literally a mob.
Yeah.
And I'm going, whoa, what, how do you know when it's your turn? But everybody kind of understands, oh yeah, you were in trouble. I mean, everybody was very polite. It wasn't like, a war to get to the teller.
Yeah.
It just, there were no queues,
Yeah.
right? And for me, that's like chaotic. And, where's the quote? Where's the quality in that?
Right.
Well, for that culture at that time, I'm not sure if it's still like that. This was 40 years ago. That's just the way you did it.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of queuing up for a service was, well, no, what are you doing? And so that would seem strange to somebody from the States or from the UK, but for them, it's perfectly fine. Right. Not our idea of quality. That's not the way you deliver service.
Right.
It's like, take a number, ring a bell, whatever, you stand in line, you get that service. Yeah. So I think there is that idea of what is the cultural norm. And again, this is aside from the technical issues of how do you inspect. It's more what are your expectations
within the culture. And I think about it historically. I mean, I think about, like, for instance, the United States versus Japan. In the post-World War II era, where American automobile manufacturers obviously totally dominated the automotive industry coming out of World War II. There was like no other major economies left. So I mean, very few that were still intact. So American kind of owned that industry for decades, the 40s, 50s, and 60s. But that reality really did affect the culture of those cars that began to come out in the 60s and 70s, where you saw that decline in quality. Because there was no need.
There's no need, right.
To have better quality.
What was driving it,
That's right. But then when Japan, and this of course culminated in if Japan can, why can't we?
Right.
That white paper on NBC. That there was an understanding of it for the first time, but that all really sprung out of the fact that American automotive manufacturers had no competition at that time for a long period of time. So that to me are some of the things that affect ultimately what a nation's output, quality output is going to be. And like you say, the expectations of the people within that culture too, the customers in that culture are really important also. Like I remember we were reading something about there was a Chinese toy recall.
Several,
but there was one big one that we were covering.
Mattel,
maybe, but it was one we covered a few years back.
Okay.
And one of the quotes was in the piece was like, maybe these Chinese managers are like, these kids should be happy to have a toy, you know? I mean, so the eye falls off and chokes them. So what? It's like, it's like we didn't have toys at all, you know? They should be happy to have a toy.
Well, no, it's strange because we did have, I'm not sure it was that article, but there was an article many years ago that one of our authors, who is somebody who deals with Chinese suppliers, he's Chinese himself, and deals with Chinese suppliers, and he says, you got to understand, kind of that idea, coming from that culture at that time and where the Chinese have been versus where they are now, he says, this concept, this meticulousness and so forth, he says, it's just, I'm paraphrasing him, but it just doesn't make sense because there's no cultural context of that for them at that time, right? And there is now, by the way. I mean, there's you're hearing it in the news quite a bit, Made in China 2025, which is all about both changing the perception and the literal shape of quality in China.
And if you think about the deadly sins of waste, the 7 deadly wastes, I mean, over processing is one of them.
Right.
That's very much depending on what a culture is. What is overly processed? For one culture, something can be processed to a certain degree. For another culture, maybe it needs to be processed to a higher degree, in order to compete and to satisfy the customers in that culture. It's interesting. Like I say, we're going to be covering this at the end of the month, so I hope a lot of you will be looking out for that. We'll tease it a little bit more as we get closer.
Yep.